say, basically what's gone off is I have been fishing my long pole, but it just went a little bit quiet. And this little method here is just a little trick what you have up your sleeve. I mean, it's always nice to just have it set up, and basically what you do is you're actually chucking it just beyond where you're feeding. You know, because what happens is once you start catching fish on your pole line, they just back off. There's times when they do back off. And if you've got this little thing set up, then obviously you can chuck just beyond your pole line. I mean, again, it's just another simple method. It's just basically a method feeder. And all I'm doing is I'm putting 4 mils round it, soaked 4 mils, and I'm fishing a banded 6 mil on hook. I mean, you can see there, I mean, I've only just really chucked it out and it's just gone straight round. I mean, it's not a massive fish, but you know, it's something else that you can put in your net. And obviously it's just, by the end of the match, you can really build a weight up. I mean, I know they're not massive, like I said, but it's just keep putting fish in your net. That's what it's basically about. You keep putting fish in your net. I mean, while you're fishing a method feed, it's quite simple. Your hands are free. Your hands are free, so you can still feed your pole line. You know, you can actually get the confidence back up on the pole line. The fish will start competing again, and then you can come back on your pole. But while you're doing that, you can chuck this out, and even if you just get 5 pulls a day, it's 5 more fish than what you would have had if you just stayed on pole line and waited for fish to come back. So just before I chuck out again, I'll just generally run through the setup that we've got. As I say, obviously I think you realise that I do generally try and keep things very, very simple. All I'm using is one of our small frenzy feeders. You know, they come already weighted, and the good thing about these methods is there's no lead with them, so they can't disintegrate and things like that. You can chuck them to islands and far banks and things, and you'll never ever smash these. They come with a swivel, and all that swivel does is just tuck inside that method feeder, as you can see there. Just tucks nice and neatly inside, and that acts, obviously, it makes it so it can run away from the feeder. And and what that generally does is it makes it very, very simple to be able to change your hook length. Again, going back to things, if you do get smashed, if you get broke, etc., you can just change this little hook length that I've got on. The rod I'm using is a 10-foot precision bomb rod. This actual rod is my favourite in the range, and I've just got 6-pound main line. I'm using 017 Vertex line, and I've got a 16 hook, again to a band, and all I'll generally do is I'll fish a 6 or maybe an 8 mil, and I'll just use soaked fishery pellets. I'll just quickly run through the way I do it and how I actually fill the feeder up. Now, method feeder has come on a hell of a long way since it first came out. You know, obviously it was very, very difficult. It got difficult to actually mould the feeders. So I mean, I know, you know, it's people. A lot of companies now are actually going down the route of bringing method moulds out, and Frenzy have also done so. I mean, ours is quite simple. It's a soft mould, and basically what you can do is you can actually peel the feeder away, so it will never ever stick with this method mould. All I generally do is, again, I pick a 6 or an 8 mil pellet like that, and all it's a matter of doing is just putting it on a band. Very, very simple. And that's my hook bait. Like I said, we're using soaked coarse fishery pellets, and a little trick, all I've done is I've just put a little bit of Horlicks on them after they've soaked. All that does is it's just malt. Basically what malt does, it helps the pellets stick together, which is very, very important, because once you chuck the feeder in, you want the feeder to land intact. You don't want to chuck the feeder in and have the pellets to come off. It's the worst thing that can happen. All I generally do is I generally put a couple in the bottom like that. I lay my hook bait in it, and then just fill the mould. I then just push my method feeder into the mould and squeeze as tight as you can. Now, you can never ever squeeze them too tight. People think, oh, that'll never break down, but you'll be very, very surprised how quickly these break down. So, like I say, I've squeezed it into the mould. All it's a matter of doing is just releasing the seal. Just pushing the bottom and actually just releasing the seal. And as you can see, I've got a lovely method feeder. My hook bait's just there inside the method feeder, and then obviously I've got the soaked pellets around it. When that hits the bottom, the pellets, what happens then is the water starts to get in between the individual pellets and helps the method feeder break down. In turn, your hook bait's showing, obviously the fish comes into your peg, your tip goes round, and the fish is mine. So that's my feeder filled up. Let's chuck it out, see if we can get another one. So I mean, again, going back to the simplicity of things, all you're basically doing is looking at your far bank marker, pulling it directly above your head, aiming to the marker and hitting your clip. Now, one very important thing that I see people doing all the time when method feeder fishing is they move it. As soon as they've chucked it in, they flick the tip, they pull it back, etc., and they move the feeder. It's the worst thing you can do. All I generally do is I just generally hold the line and actually look at the water until the line meets in the middle. Now, when you think about it, you're actually still fishing, because I can actually tell when I'm getting a bite, because obviously I'll feel it in my fingers. So when people chuck the tip out and they just leave it, you know, the fish has got, before it can go round, the fish has got to pick all that slack line up before you get a bite on your tip. Now, the way that I do it, by holding the line, I'm actually fishing. You know, I'll chuck the method feeder in and I'm fishing straight away because I'm actually holding the line, you know, and you'll feel the bites. So, you know, I think that's very, very important, because once it's hit the water, the last thing you want to do is move it. So, as I say, when people flick the tips, when they pull it back, etc., you're moving the feeder, and all that's doing is leaving a trail of bait behind, and it's just not right. Now, like I said, today, as it happens, this is the last method. You know, it's like as a backup, etc. It's just one of them things that I have set up on my side tray. But there is times when this is actually a number one method. There is certain pegs on this lake where you can chuck to islands and things like that. I mean, and it actually comes into its own. There's not very often you can compete on the. Oh, here we go. As I say, you can see that the fish have backed off the pole line, and it's gone round. There may not be massive fish, but as I say, all you're doing is keeping fish going in your net all the time. Going back to what I was saying, I mean, like I say, sometimes this comes into its own, especially when chucking to islands and things like that. Then this will actually be the first thing that I set up instead of the last. You know, when you're chucking to islands and things like that, it's just natural cover. It's natural cover what the fish want to actually sit round. And that this is the most accurate and best way of actually, oh, it's a skimmer, of actually presenting a hook bait around an island. So that is, you know, is generally, that's when I pick this up as a number one method. It's a skimmer, but as I said, they're not a bad stamp, and all you're doing is just keeping that weight, you're keeping yourself ticking over while you're feeding that pole line. As I say, I've chucked it in, I've put my tip down, it's on my box away from myself, so I've got both hands free. Then that's when you start catapulting your lines, etc. So you chuck your tip out, pick your 5/8 marker, very, very simple, chuck your tip out, put it down, sink your line with your hand, you know, so you're not moving the feeder at all, and then you've got both hands free. Just let the bite develop, let the tip go round. I see many, many people striking at liners, and you've missed out on a perfectly good bite. Basically, all you're doing is you're lessening the chance of them picking your hook bait up, because what's happening then is when you strike at a liner, you're leaving a little pile of bait out there. What you need to do, chuck the method feeder in, put it on beside you, don't put it on your knee and things like that, because you get tempted to pick the rod up. Wait for the rod to go round properly, then pick the rod up. Obviously, you'll get a fish every single chuck if you do it right.